ground to cover. So I will try my best to take attendance, and I think that Emily, hopefully, you're taking attendance as well. I don't think Doug's here this evening. So I will start with my co-chair, Councilor Dion.
Present.
Board member Aura Russell Better.
Here. I'm here. Hi.
Hello. Jess Marino.
Here.
Emily Figdor, board member.
Here.
Thank you. And we are missing this evening Matthew Winch, which he did let us know that he was going to be out of town. I have not heard from Paul Stevens or Abigail Fuller or Jay. They may join us as we go along, but I think that we should get going here. And first and foremost, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July 13th?
So moved.
Oh, Ms. Figdor, seconded by?
Second.
Is that you, Mark?
It is.
Okay. Any errors or omissions on the meeting minutes? Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please indicate. Okay. Unanimous with all those present. And I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Botana to kick us off.
Thank you, Sarah, and good evening, everyone. So we have a pretty full agenda today, as you may have seen. We're going to start with a number of business items, and I want to do a little bit of framing of those business items before we jump in. So we had discussed at the time that we finalized the recommendation to the board to move forward with the transfer of funds from the reserves to support the Presumpscot project, that the next order of business for the DABC would be to help us to make decisions about how to allocate the remaining funds to the existing alternates for all three of those projects. So, that was originally what we intended for our agenda today to be centered around. But we're going to spend a little bit of time talking through where we are with those alternates. But I think it's important to frame the conversation for today around all of the things that are currently pending, that are in the process at the three schools, that makes it where it is not possible for us at this point to be able to make decisions around the alternates yet, primarily because there's significant issues in getting ourselves off the ground and the potential for added expenses to be able to meet some of those significant challenges. And so we want to make sure that we have the alternates conversation when we actually know how much money we have in the reserves to be able to do that. And so, I think everybody knows that, at the board meeting on July, I want to say 18th, the board approved entering into contract with Great Falls for the work at Presumpscot. And, we are now three schools under contract and starting out. But what we want to do today is spend most of our time talking about those other issues that are delaying our ability to talk about the alternates. So we're going to talk about, where we are with the three projects. And then, that will be our agenda for today. And when we have a better sense of what our project reserves are, we will be in a better position to have the conversation about the alternates. So with that, I guess before I move on to pass it on to Mark and Lisa to walk through the status of the projects, I do want to pause and make sure if anybody has any questions, that we have an opportunity to deal with those. All right. So I will ask Mark, are you doing this, or is Lisa leading this conversation?
We are tag teaming a bit here, and so I will start it off here and go through some of the material we have prepared. And as I go through, I'll try to be mindful to pause and look for opportunities for people to ask questions as we go through this. But the agenda that we've got is we've already done the welcome and approval of the minutes. We'll have a brief, as Superintendent Botana said, we'll have a brief discussion about the alternates, and then we're going to get into kind of a status update of getting off the ground here, if you will, on the 3 school renovation addition projects. And so, and then we'll talk a little bit about just our upcoming meeting schedules here. So with that, the award amounts of the 3 projects, actually including Lyseth, put us at a construction amount of the $51,461,702. The comparison to our budgeted amounts left us with call it a surplus of $521,916. So that's sort of that amount that we were looking at being able to appropriate for various alternates. I'll pause for a second before we go through the list of what those alternates that were included in the contract documents are. So, Sarah, I think there's a hand raised. Oh, Sarah or Mark. I think, Emily, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Just noting as we get into the conversation about alternates, as they're listed here, I think in various orders, depending on the school, just having looked at the slides earlier. And I don't think we need to get to this level of detail for this conversation, but just let's get back to eventually the listing that was prioritized by the individual building committees. Because I think, the building committees had pretty meaningful conversations about for each of the projects, what were in their minds the key priorities. And I feel strongly that the building committees are closest to each of the individual projects.
I think that's helpful. Yeah, absolutely. And so you're right. The order that will show of the alternates is simply as they were identified in the contract documents. It does not indicate the order of priority or preference of the various schools. So absolutely. All right. So right now, this slide is just an overview of what the total value of the various alternates amounted to and we'll look at what those are individually here in the next few slides, but just a quick summary of what the alternate cost would amount to. And Longfellow, the alternates that were priced by the contractors. The first one were classroom wing nodes, and those are just the areas in the corridors that we had identified to create wayfinding and pin-up space and breakout space for students and staff to work together. The second one was replace all the interior doors that were not scheduled for replacement as part of the scope of the work. So that would have created a uniform appearance of all doors with all the same current features in them. So in terms of the size of the glass and the composition of the door itself. The third one was replace all the unit ventilators. And so this is the mechanical systems that supply the fresh air to the classrooms. So at Longfellow, that's the majority of the spaces, with the exception of a few of the larger. The gym is served by a larger air handling unit, but the rest of the spaces are primarily served by these unit ventilators are in the wall. So that's the equipment that provides fresh air. So that would have been a replacement of all those units. The fourth one is replace exhaust fans. And so that works in concert with air handlers, the larger air handling equipment. So so that's the other half of the HVAC system, if you will. There's sort of the unit ventilators, which do most of the building, and then there's exhaust fans and air handling units that are the other part of the mechanical system. So those two right there are a big part of what would have been desired to upgrade the quality of the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system for the building. The next one is the allowance for the masonry upgrades for the cast stone and brick on the exterior of the building to improve that, where there's been some spalling or some deterioration of the concrete, the cast concrete, the ornamental, as well as areas of the brick that the joints in the brick, as well as washing the brick on the exterior of the building. And then lastly is the value for the kitchen cafeteria, the warming kitchen and the cafeteria addition on the back of the building.
I think Emily has a question.
Sorry, I just forgot to put my hand down.
Okay.
Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
All right. Does Brad have Brad was waving. I don't know if Brad's got a question or not.
Okay, I see Jess as well. So Brad, go ahead.
Okay, yep. Sorry about that.
Brad, you can go ahead. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay, I finally found the mute button. I think Jessica was actually first before I held up my hand, so I'm willing to wait.
Absolutely. Jessica?
It's fine either way. I'm always happy to go first. So at one point, HVAC was listed separately on the alternates list. It had improved HVAC, and then it also had the ventilators and the exhaust fans. And I know that the BLAC had put HVAC first because the heating system is such an issue there because it's connected to the boiler at Deering, and there's such poor temperature control in the classrooms. So is that something the unit ventilators and the exhaust fans would improve? How is, I mean, if you can kind of explain to me as a layperson, how would that improve what the classrooms are actually getting for heat at Longfellow?
Yeah, so the unit ventilators, Jessica, they're typically there's one unit in a classroom. Some of the larger spaces may have more than one, but they have a heating coil in them right now. And so, right now it's, so that heating coil then activates during the winter months. And so as the air is moving in, it's thermostatically controlled in the space, so that as that fresh air comes in through the wall, and there are little sleeves in the exterior of the wall, little louvers that you sometimes can see, those grills on the exterior of the building, they'll bring in the fresh air, it passes through filters, passes through the heating coil, and then it's delivered into the space. The regulation of the temperature, oftentimes it boils down to the controls and the efficiency of the unit itself. And so improvements in the unit by putting a new unit in there immediately is going to be easier to control. The controls just are electronic now, where in the past they've been pneumatic controls. They used air to open and close based on temperature. Now that's all solid state electronics, and so the controls are better in terms of being able to regulate that temperature in the space, and the sensors in the spaces are much better now as well. With regard to what the existing issues are with respect to areas of the building that either get too hot or don't get hot enough. Again, I think some of that's probably dependent on the older controls and the older equipment. So that our expectation is that in taking that alternate, you'd vastly improve the quality of the conditioning of those spaces.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
And Mr. Stilfen has probably, I don't know if he's had some experience with the equipment over at Longfellow, and I know there's some, there may have been some improvements with the unit ventilators over the past, but I don't know, Steve, if you've got anything to offer.
Yeah, and I think basically it is the controls, the pneumatic, the air, the tubing gets cracked and it breaks, Jessica, and we've gone through every one of them during the pandemic, corrected almost all, if not all, of issues like that. And so their dampers are stroking appropriately. The boilers are only 5 years old at Deering, so the boilers aren't the issue. It's really control and zoning. And in the past, the maintenance hadn't been kept up as well as it probably should have. But in our pandemic situation, we've gone through all of the unit ventilators, not only in Longfellow, but throughout the whole district, and ensured that all of the motors are running properly, that the dampers are actuating, and that the controls are being controlled from the thermostat on the wall to a 2 to 3 degree variance depending on where we are. So we're in a much stronger position in all of our schools with our older unit ventilators, and all rooftop units have been thoroughly maintained and are operating properly. So we're not going to be looking at the same type of heating and ventilation that we were experiencing there prior to the pandemic. We put a lot of money into the equipment, so they're running to their specifications as they were built. And if they're not, we've replaced them out of operations budgets and COVID federal funding that would replace these units under those funding sources. So
are you saying that replacing the unit ventilators like it lists on the alternate list wouldn't change anything then, because the unit ventilators are now working as well as possible?
Yeah, I would say that for the trade-off to the equipment when maintained, although it is using air rather than electronics and digital circuit boards, they still work when they're maintained properly, and they provide the specific stated CFM or circulation of air. Yes, I would prefer to have all digital equipment in all of our schools, but the equipment that we do have, when it is maintained and operated properly, provides the same cubic feet of air movement in the classrooms and in the common spaces.
So I guess that, yeah. I know we're not making this decision today. I don't want to keep going on about this, but it seems like this is something, like to Emily's point, that the BLAC needs to have more input on, because I'd be curious to hear from them whether they feel like the heating system is improved, or whether that still needs to be a priority.
I can say my feedback from Terry and Longfellow and other staff, teaching staff, that it's been as good as it's ever been or it will ever be in a pandemic.
Okay. All right.
So that's the feedback I'm getting. It's working well, okay. and it's protecting our kids. In the classrooms, we have phenomenal air, cold plasma generators in all of our unit ventilators, all of our HVAC units on the roof. We're providing a ionized, sterilized air. So we're in the best shape since I've been here with HVAC.
Are you all set, Jess?
I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Brad, but before I do, I just want to recognize that Abigail Fuller, one of our members, has joined us. So welcome, Abigail. And moving to Brad Post, and then I see that we have Terry Young, Principal Young. Do you want to go there first, if Brad doesn't mind?
Yeah, just because I want to make sure that Terry, who just heard Steve represent what he said, weighs in on that. Okay. So it's not somebody speaking for him.
Can we? Let me see if can you promote him, or can I go in and unmute him? Let me see. I'll go in and unmute.
Greg, can you handle that?
You can, oh, it's an attendee. I'm sorry. I was confused.
I just put him allowed to talk. Terry, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Steve said. They went through every ventilator in every room in every space. I mean, they were there for a lot of days taking things apart. So from what I've heard from staff and from what I've observed, it seems like it was probably the best it's been last winter. So I would agree with that.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Yep.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. Brad, go ahead. Thank you.
So I think I have two questions. One is, do items like these ventilators, the exhaust fans, and especially the exterior masonry repair, wouldn't those come under just your basic school maintenance cost over time? And what is the possibility that some of these items can be helped or paid for by state and federal funds that are outside of the bond?
Would you like to address that, or Javier?
Yeah, I can address it. I think that everything that is is being done at all three of the schools are things that, I don't want to say all of it, but a significant number of those things are the result of delayed maintenance over the course of the years. So I think it's important to know that we have facilities analysis that says that we have, upwards of $300 million worth of repairs that need to happen within the next 20 years. And that the referendum, as originally conceived, took 50 million or so of those repairs off the table. So while it's true that all of these things could be a part of the school district's ongoing budget, it's also true that that we don't have the money to do all of those things, right? And so that was the purpose of the renovations at the 4 BFOF schools. So then it gets more complex because of the existence of the bond, which then sort of removes the schools from being able to use CIP sort of local funds for projects that are associated with the bond. So we can't, pull money from our CIP to do these repairs. So that leaves us with the possibility of using state or federal funds, which, is not something that we can decide here or decide today. And again, we have $300 million worth of repairs that need to be done, including things like a roof at Portland High School, windows at, all of our schools. So, I don't think that, the purpose of the bond was to deal with all or most of the concerns that exist at these three schools. So it does not move these three schools to the top of the list.
Can I just add to that, Javier and Brad, that with CIP right now we're completing a major HVAC project at the Deering High School. All of the 3 roof units have been replaced. That was a CIP project spearheaded or administered by our city partners to get that done. So we're renewing. We have a program in CIP and we're completing 2 projects. The second will be started in November. It's at the Talbot School. So we have a process in place to chip away at this $300 million stuff. And our maintenance levels are certainly increased, thankfully, to the pandemic. If there's a silver lining, I guess from a facilities guy, I would say that would be it. So we have our eyes squarely on the ball for any air moving equipment in the district.
Thank you.
Any further questions before we move on from anybody? Okay, go ahead, Mark.
So at Reiki, the alternates that we included in the contract documents were the some upgrades finishes at the small group rooms. So in that was using some upgrades from just drywall walls on the outside, so a little more durability with some wood paneling, and it warms up the interior environment on some of the small group rooms that we have off of the classroom corridor. The second one was an alternate location, or it says alternate location, but it's an additional pre-K classroom. The next one was the learning courtyard, which is a space directly outside of the current entrance that will become a space off of the brickworks and to the right of the new entrance. The next one was warming kitchen renovation. So that was actually kind of installing a warming kitchen where right now there's a very modest food service prep area. I wouldn't even call it a kitchen. And then the next one was to replace the hydronics, the water heat piping that goes throughout the building. And so that's a point where it's aged. And again, it's one of those systems that eventually will need to be replaced. And then the last one was the entrance trellis that was identified. And I know that, so that those will round up the list there. We talked about acoustic improvements at one point for the brickwork or the cafeteria area. And we talked about that those have been, we've included acoustic upgrades as part of the base contract.
Emily?
Yeah, so just to make sure people are aware, the priorities for the Reiki Building Committee were the additional pre-K classroom. Right now at Reiki, after the renovation, we'll have just one pre-K classroom. The Reiki is one of our biggest elementary schools. And then the second was to have a warming kitchen. What we have now is, as Mark alluded to, is not functional in any way. So those are the two. Those were the two top priorities from the building committee.
Thank you, Emily. Anybody else? Okay, Mark, go ahead.
And at Przemska, the alternates included new unit ventilators in the classrooms, the existing classrooms. Interior doors replacement. So again, all the doors were at the same appearance and features. The next one was to renovate the existing hallways. As we're doing at Lyseth right now, we're completing the upgrades to the existing hallways. At Przemska, we did not include that as part of the scope of the work. And then the last one are the classroom wing nodes, the breakout areas in the classrooms.
Any questions on Przemska? Okay, go ahead, Mark.
So now we'll get into just a conversation about where we are with respect to the three projects that we had a tremendous effort to get them all designed and bid, and now shifting gears and getting them permitted and into construction has been an effort, to say the least, and that's because it's the complexity of the codes around not only the renovation itself with existing buildings, but also understanding how the code applies to the phasing of students, and not only in the building, but are also looking at the compliance of the modular classrooms that are being occupied for students outside of the buildings. And so all of those factors are just, again, a lot of effort back and forth with the city planning or the code review department to get all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So we'll give you kind of an update on what's going on with respect to the contractor activities, and then also where we are with the permitting and implications to the schedules right now on these. And so at just starting off with Lyseth, we're in the very last phase of construction here this summer for Lyseth. And Lisa can attest to, she was there today, just checking things out. She'll be back again tomorrow, looking at progress. But we've got a lot of the quarter breakout spaces, and we'll show you a picture in a minute, are installed, and they're putting the wood paneling up like we had some of us had seen on the tour of the one that was done over in the kindergarten wing at Lyseth when we were there last or this past summer. The next one was the ceiling installation that's ongoing in the corridors. New ceilings are being installed with new lighting, installation of electrical devices in the classrooms, and so that's and the corridors as well. But so that's ongoing. Corridor benches that are part of those nodes as well. Classroom casework has been installed throughout all of the classrooms that were renovated as part of this. And then we have toilet, the smaller toilets that we've done in the ceramic tile that's going into the single-user toilets. And then drinking fountains have been installed in the corridors as well. So those are, again, a lot of the work was in some of the, or a lot of it in this last phase was the classroom corridors. We'll see that, I think, in the next, or I'm not sure, let's see if we've got, there we go. So you can start to see the classroom corridor and what they look like. This is, I believe, Lisa, this is looking down the 2-3 corridor.
You have me turned around here. I think that is the 2-3 corridor. Yeah, the 1-2, sorry.
Oh, we're at 1-2, okay. All right, and then we've got the node right here, and we talked about the benches going in, the wood paneling. So that's been installed. You can just see the drinking fountains in the main corridor here. They're wrapped up right now, but there's tile, new ceramic tile behind them, and then we have new ceilings installed in the main corridor.
And it's actually progressed significantly since those photos were taken a couple days ago.
So at Longfellow, the construction activity includes the portables have been installed on the foundation. So we've got 3 structures, if you will. They come in halves and they put them together. So those have been installed on the foundations, and the stairs and the ramps have been installed or are being installed on those. They've started the excavation, the site work around the elevator addition, as well as the classroom space addition on the back of the building, the classroom and the stairs tower. Abatement is ongoing on the first floor. So they've removed a lot of the material at the ceilings and the floor. Then they're framing out, it's called bump outs, but they're framing out locations in the corridor where we have new electric panels or other aspects of utilities that we're putting in. And then demolition is underway on the lower level of the building right now. And this is, again, taking on a lot of work. So you can see in the main picture, the big picture to the left, you can see a temporary ceiling goes in. So when we took out the ceiling in the corridor that had hazardous materials, we are required to put up a rated ceiling to create a safe corridor as part of that egress component, the corridor itself. And so so that is ongoing. You can see on the floor they've got the protection on top of the floor itself. And you can see the workers in the corridor going on. So when school gets back in session, they'll have tiles in that ceiling system, so it'll look like a suspended ceiling system. But get a little glimpse of what's above the ceilings in Longfellow. On the right-hand pictures, you can see in the upper right, you can see the excavation going on in the back of the building. And so we're kind of between Deering and Longfellow right here, looking over at the construction activity. The retaining wall, painted retaining walls right here. You can see a little bit of it, and there's a ramp, that earthen ramp that gets them up to the area in the courtyard and back to the area of the elevator excavation. And then the lower area, you can see the new portables that have been placed in the area near the parking lot.
Jess Marino?
Are the portables going to be functional for start of school? Or kids going to be starting the school year in them?
Yeah, so right now, the utilities are all connected. What we're doing is going through with the city. They have to be inspected, and they have to be to the same degree of safety as any other building to have students in. And so the city has been reviewing several aspects of it with both us and the contractor to make sure that they are safe. It is our full understanding at this time that that'll be completed in time for the students to get in there. But there's items that were going on today just to make sure the fire alarm is connected, and that there's a safety for first responders if they need to get into the building. I'm trying to think of any other items that we're looking into right now in the portables. Lisa, do you remember anything else that was on the list of the portables?
We're installing, yeah. I mean, you covered some of the big stuff. CO2 sensors and some making sure different things are connected, and they'll get the different inspectors out there to do their final inspections. We've been doing pre-inspections so that we can work up towards that final inspection. They'll be back out to the buildings to do that and let us know if there's anything else.
So is there like furniture in there? Because, just thinking, I'm just wondering how this is affecting like the staff and everything. Are they going to be ready to go for the first day with kids in there?
They will, but it is affecting the staff. So our plan is to be there, but the schedule as it currently stands is not the schedule that we have for other buildings right now. So at this point, there is a high likelihood that the first couple of days for Longfellow staff will not be at Longfellow.
Okay.
And we've made, alternate plans for that. But, it does absolutely get in the way, but we do absolutely plan to be ready to go on the first day of school for kids.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Jess. Any other questions right now? Okay, go ahead.
So just kind of following up on that, the permit status of the portable permit, in order for us to place those permits and get those ready for the start of school and get all the utilities in and inspected, that was received, and that's why we're at this last stage of it for this. But the building permit is still ongoing for the full construction project at Longfellow. As part of that, there are, as you all know, there are phases of the project. And so what we're doing right now is working with the city plan review department to make sure that this first phase of having students in, that the building is safe and secure for that. And so in addition to looking at the overall building project, we're also looking very carefully at this in the first phase of getting the students back in to the building, now that there's been some work done, that the corridor, as you had seen, has been opened up and work has been proceeding inside of the building. So now we have to, from that, just make sure that the building's safe. And so we're working through a list of comments that we have been going back and forth with the city plan review department on those. And one of those was an existing, just kind of highlight a few of those. One of those important decisions was, or items that we had to look at with the city. We had the classrooms on the second level, or call it the second level, the upper level. They have two stairs that are on the Stevens Ave side of the building, in front of the building, and occupants go through those stairs. And in new codes, it requires that the occupants from a stairwell go directly to the exterior for the most part. So they go into a safe rated stair enclosure, and they can exit the building from there. When this building was constructed, that was not the case. They could exit into the stairs. So anyone who remembers Longfellow School, you go up and down through the stairs, but they empty into the hallway of the lower level. And from there, you go to the outside. And so one of those things in evaluating that existing condition, we had to work through with the city is there's an allowance to have one of the stairs go through a rated enclosure directly to the outside. And so we've looked at the stairwell that's closest to the Deering or to the Deering School side, and made an enclosure, rated enclosure from the stair through the corridor to the outside on that side of the building. So that was an alternate way of compliance that we worked through with the city. So that was one that was resolved. The next is looking at phasing items, that the corridor wall between where the contractors are going to be working during the school year, where they're working, has to be carefully separated from where the occupied areas of the students are. And so looking at how do we ensure that the integrity of that separation between the construction activity and the students, making sure that that's fully in place, that it's constructed very safely. And so again, that's all to make sure that the building is safe during the school year while both are in there. And so in working through, and we're still working through the list gets smaller and smaller, but we're still working through some items with them. And so, but we're getting awfully close to that. And it's a daily, multiple times a day process to get through. But right now, if there was a extended delay in getting the permit, that might impact the scope and timing of the project. But right now, we're not sure if there would be any impact to the project's schedule as we've kind of outlined it. So we're kind of working carefully with the contractor on that, Blaine Casey on Longfellow.
Emily?
Mark, can you give us a sense of at what point this prolonged process would incur would impact the scope and timing in a more meaningful way?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say right now, the good news is, again, that some of the critical path items, the contractor is able to continue moving on, like the excavation of the foundation for the foundations. And so that work is oftentimes one of those important critical path items that has to happen. They have to get the foundations before anything else can happen. So that work has been going on while we're working through some of these issues. Similarly, the rest of the work that we're doing on the inside isn't right now having a significant delay, and we don't think it will, because we're coming up at the tail end of all these comments. And so right now I don't see where it will, but again, we're just being mindful that the contractor probably expected that they'd be able to move a little more quickly on some items, but right now I don't think there's anything right now that we see that will be a significant impact. So just kind of a cautionary note, if you will.
Okay, thank you. But just noting we still don't have that permit, so.
That's right. Yep, exactly.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Reiki. Construction activity. The portables likewise have been installed on the foundations and they're being connected and inspected. Walkways around the portables are being established. We've got excavation for the addition has not yet started at, so unlike Longfellow, the excavation for additions has not yet started at Reiki. So that's, we're still, there's about, several weeks from when we bid and awarded Longfellow to when we bid and awarded Reiki. And so we see a little bit of that separation in terms of the construction activity too. On the second floor, there has been some abatement of some flooring and adhesive that was hazardous. And so that has it's been started, and we'll see in a minute in the picture that's been removed. And then the construction wall separating the construction activity from the student activity has been constructed on that second level as well. So what that looks like on the second level, you can see where the flooring has been removed. You can see the metal wall studs that are constructed from the floor to the underside of the waffle slab. And so that's kind of on the big picture, give you a sense of what what it looks like right now. And then you can see the modular unit in the upper right, as well as all 3 modulars in the lower right. And I'll pause for a second.
I think we're good, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. So I think that one of the exciting aspects is to actually see what will become walls and eventually no more waffle slab. So
It's more than exciting.
Exactly. The permit status, again, likewise, the permit for the portable was received. That's allowed us to move forward with that. And then with the city, some of the issues that we've been working through with them are the rating between the new addition for the admin area and the entrance, that separation of that to the existing building. And that was something that we worked through, the level of rating that would be required of that, that joint between the two. And so we're finalizing, I guess, some of the details on that. So the building of this construction type is restricted in terms of how large it can be. And by putting an addition onto it, we have to almost create that addition as a separate building. And so the separation between the 2 buildings, if you will, is what we're detailing and working through the details with this city in terms of what exactly they're going to require for that. And so that's an item that is being worked with them on. And then with respect to their phasing that we're reviewing, the original idea was to have some amount of work done this summer, and that was our phase 1, and then in the fall we move into phase 2, and we've restructured that phasing with the contractor, or in the process of restructuring that phasing with the contractor. And so right now you can see what the work is accomplished over the summer. But then during the work that was going to be done over the summer, we've restructured as part of other phases. And so right now it hasn't impacted the overall schedule, but we're keeping an eye on that as we still wait for the issuance of the building permit. So likewise with Longfellow here, we don't yet have a building permit, but we're working with the contractor to accommodate all the scope within the established timeframe that we originally set for the project. Any questions before I move to Przemska? All right. Well, did I miss one, Sarah? Or we're good?
Nope, I said, I think you were good. Thank you.
Okay, great.
I have
We're sneaking
yeah,
in.
absolutely.
I have last minute comment just for folks who haven't seen the portables as they've gone up at Reiki and Longfellow. I haven't seen Longfellow's, but I can say, living just around the corner from the Reiki ones, they look great, actually. And I think hearing the staff talk about them, they feel like if kids are gonna walk right out to the outdoors, they're gonna be right there in the garden. There's a lot of positive energy around the portables, which I didn't anticipate. So some grumbling about the loss of our dusty soccer fields, but mostly a lot of excitement.
So the last project that was awarded, obviously, is the one that's further behind in terms of progress. And so the site work has commenced at Przemska to a degree. We've got some concrete structures that have been brought over for the stormwater system. And so if anyone's been over to the site, they've seen those that have started to be delivered, as well as we've had some tree cutting that occurred. And so that's kind of the progress right now. We have yet to really get full mobilization and activity going there, but we're getting closer and closer. So over by the playground, you can see tree removal because it's awfully close to where the addition is going over in that corner. And so that's happened. So and then you can see on the lower right-hand corner where I talked about those structures that have been delivered to the site. And at Presumpscot, we have a different case with respect to the portable permit. We do not yet have the portable permit, as we do with Reiki and Longfellow. And so there's an aspect of the code that, given that has most recently changed with respect to some of these aspects of the portables themselves, which we have to, right now we're looking, if we move them right now, they have to be sprinkled, which means that we have to get a water line out to them and then to install a sprinkler system. And so right now we're just considering some alternatives to the complexity of having to install a sprinkler system for those, for the existing. So we all remember there are 3 existing modular classrooms that we're intending to relocate on the site and continue to use them, but just in a different location. And so, but because of the requirement to sprinkle them, we're considering using a different space, using leased space off site, so that we wouldn't have to use the portables at all, or consider smaller ones that get around the requirement to have to sprinkle the modular units. And so those are still being considered actively right now. So we've got all 3 options coming along at the same time right now. So, and then with respect to the permitting itself for the building, there's a change in the code that occurred in July 1st of this year, which is a stretch energy code. And so the permit, in essence, was applied, around that time or after that time, I think it was. And so the new requirements do apply to Presumpscot where they don't apply to Reiki or Longfellow. And so one of them is the energy code, that it's called the International Energy Code, and that we're just now reviewing what that impact will be on the projects, and so we have to submit compliance with that as part of our application. So and so right now that's kind of where we're at, moving with that one. The phasing, we're not sure yet what the impact to the phasing for this project is. There was not a lot of work planned for the summer at Presumpscot, just primarily the relocation of the portables, and so we're working with Great Falls on updating the schedule for the overall project. And I'll pause. Lisa, any other aspects to this one? I know you've been in the weeds here, and then definitely open up for questions.
I think we can just open up for questions, Mark.
Okay, great.
Aura?
I think Jess was first, but do you care?
Okay, she'll let you speak. You haven't spoken yet.
Thank you. So I guess one of my questions, just to clarify, Mark, about the city, when you say city looking to have existing portable sprinkler, you just mean that's part of the new law that we have to follow, right? Or are you saying that the city's looking into how we would do that?
No, yeah, good point. No, just okay. to your first point, it's part of the requirements. Yep.
Okay, because it just seemed like that didn't seem like a reasonable step to do, the sprinkling. That's why I was just asking about that.
Yeah, they're not grandfathered in some essence. So, right now they're in their existing location. They obviously can't stay there because that's where the addition is going to go. And so in moving those, it's going to trigger us to comply with that aspect of the code.
And so we don't know anything more about getting an exemption from that.
It's being looked at with the city's or the school department's legal counsel right now. So they're looking at the fact that we were actually substantially engaged in the permitting of the project, having gone through all the site permitting prior to this. And so they're looking at that as a potential way of, do we comply in getting around this aspect of it? But
okay. And then did you say that within the existing, wait, sorry, the part about, I don't see it on there, but I think you said something about potentially other, excuse me, portables being used. You said, is it the size that a smaller size would not require the sprinkler? Is the sprinkler about certain square footage? Is that right?
Exactly right. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly right. Or that's so. If
Okay.
the size is less than 1,000 square feet, it doesn't require it to be sprinkled. So, but that has an impact in terms of how many students you could put into the
Right.
portable too.
And is that like renting a port? I just have no concept of what that cost is. I mean, is that just being explored about the?
We're looking into that right now, getting smaller sized units if we can keep them under 1,000 square feet in one per building and keep them 30 feet apart. We don't have to sprinkler them.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. And then just to understand about the cost for those kind of pieces, like, is that part of, is it called contingency, or like where does that come from if you do have to choose one of those options?
That's absolutely one of the considerations, and that's why the whole preface of tonight's conversation has been in lieu of being able to reuse an existing asset, the cost to either sprinkle it or to rent other portable units or to lease space is going to have to come from the funds that have not been used yet to expend for the construction bids.
And will you remind me, I know you've shared this before in slides, so I apologize, but is the contingency for all around all the projects, or is it per project?
So each project does have a contingency that's was based on 5% of the construction budget.
Right.
And so that each of those projects has a contingency, as well as we have just the differential of the bids to what was budgeted for the bids as well, that we outlined at the beginning of the show.
Okay. And then lastly, just wondering about, I'm not clear. I understand like the steps that are happening in this project and the other projects actually, excuse me, like the bid cost, and I don't know if timing changes, like can this affect our overall cost? Like I don't understand the steps about that with the contract. Sure. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the contractors, when they submitted a price, it was based on a certain sequencing of sort of when they would be able to start the project and when we told them they had to be finished. If there's anything that changes materially in that time frame, that could impact, that would have a cost impact on the contractor, they have the right to claim for a cost on that. And so that's something that, again, that we're being very careful about. So when we hear the word delay, that's where the concern about additional costs might come from. Those would have to be paid out of the contingencies as well.
Okay, and then I'm imagining, can they tell us that up front, or we don't always know what the amount of time going by, the cost of materials, right? I mean, is it just an estimate that they would make? I mean,
yeah, so that's exactly part of the challenge, is that they don't know fully what that will be until they in our case right now, until they can establish what the schedule is from a start date. And so and then as they get into it, like an example is that if it requires that they do work in the winter that they were planning on doing in the fall, they may have to use heat to accomplish that work. And so that would cost, the money for that heating would cost them more than they anticipated, and they would ask for funds to compensate them for that.
Okay, so it's all kind of based on the start date, which is start date after we get the permit, like when we have the fees?
Yeah,
okay.
That's what we're trying to allow them, with the city's guidance, as much access to the sites to get work done as they can before the permit's been received.
Okay, thank you so much. That's really helpful.
So I'm not sure where Sarah is, but Jessica, you want to go next, and then we'll go to Brad?
Sarah had to hop off.
Okay.
So I know we're kind of already have said this, but so the other schools weren't affected because their permits were put in before July 1st, and July 1st, all the Green New Deal new regulations went into effect, and that's what's affecting this the most.
Yeah, not even the Green New Deal. This is just changes to the city code. So.
And did we know that was going to happen?
We didn't, there's reference, the language they use is the latest energy code. And so there's not, I guess the challenge we had is that when we were designing this, we were designing it to the code that was in place at the time, which is the standard practice that you design to the code that you have. And so, so we didn't anticipate that at the point that the permit would be pulled, that what would the requirements of IECC 2021, what would they be and what would their impact on the project be? So that's an aspect of, when something comes online, when our permit gets actually pulled. And so all of that, was within weeks. And so that's why, the potential change in scope to the drawings and the design.
Mark, when was that? When did the city adopt that that code?
So, well, like I said, the adoption was in effect on July 1st, and our permit was applied for about, I think, a few days after that, and so that's kind of the building permit application we had was a few days after that.
But is that when they adopted those the regulations that that require the modulars to be sprinklered?
That's a little, I think, a little different, and one of them is because some of those requirements are the state requirements for the MUBEC, the Maine Uniform Building and Energy Code, and that's different than this stretch code, if you will, of 2021. And so the stretch code applied, or that went into effect in July. That's the one that's going to likely require that, again, that we look very carefully at the building envelope, the amount of insulation on the addition that we're using. It's going to look at energy consumption of the mechanical equipment and even lighting systems in the building. So it's going to look very carefully at energy compliance. The issue of the portables is, in the sprinkling of those, I think that's an item that I think MUBEC has been looking at for some time, and I'm not sure exactly when that requirement went into effect. So, Lisa, I don't know if you have any more detail around the MUBEC sprinkler requirement.
So the MUBEC sprinkler requirement is in the 2018 NFPA 101. There was a waiver, and I might not have the exact term correct, from the governor allowing portables not to be sprinklered. Unfortunately, that expired on June 30th of this year. So because the permit was pulled after that time, we then were required to sprinkler the portables at Presumpscot.
But when we were designing the building, was that MUBEC code in place?
The MUBEC code was in place, as well as the exception, or the waiver, I should say.
But did we know, and were we relying on the existence of the waiver?
Go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, yeah, the anticipation was that we would be within that window, but we didn't know, if and when or the waiver would be extended or not extended. So that's, there was a variability in that. And so, but our consideration was that, yeah, we would still be, like the other two projects, we would still be within that window and not be required to sprinkle the portable.
So I guess that was kind of my question, was how did we not know that was coming into effect? But it sounds like maybe we just didn't, or it was kind of lost in the mix. But regardless, the offsite location is really concerning to me, and I would imagine, even if it construction-wise looked more feasible than having smaller portables, would end up costing, I would imagine, the superintendent might speak to this, I don't know if that would, I would imagine, be additional cost for the school department if you're busing kids to another location, and if you're feeding them lunch at another location, and you need to have, staff there that can't easily travel back and forth between classrooms. So that would be my only thought about that being an even like a feasible alternative.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at all of those options. There are costs associated with each and every one of them, and one really significant consideration is the delays that will accrue from either getting those waivers put in place or being able to secure new buildings that we don't currently have that would then need to be put on platforms and or to build out the sprinkler system for the existing ones. All of that is going to push it's basically all going to push us out of the summer, fall construction season. And so that means that what was intended to be done in this year will not happen. And it'll push us to have the modulars for another year, which will also have some associated costs. So I think that's the balancing act for us right now is any delays that push us past like early September make it where we can't move into those new arrangements until winter break, and it means we can't break ground on the addition.
I'm going to jump in because I think Sarah's still not here and my hand is up. But it just, if we, a couple of things. One, I think we learned from the Green New Deal passage and figuring out the implications for our projects that we, given that they were substantially in progress, we're able to move forward. So it seems like, didn't we learn from that process that given that the projects were advanced as much as they were, that we shouldn't at the very last minute have to comply with new requirements. And then just a bigger point is where we are in terms of the timeline because of the delays for the city in getting our bid material, the projects out to bid. So it feels, we are getting doubly hit because of the city's delays. So it just feels like an untenable situation that we're in right now.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do, our posture has been just to work as collaboratively with the city as we can, and with the circumstances we have. I think so. That's again from our perspective what we're trying to do, recognizing that it's a bit of a challenge right now getting all these through with the city's staff and all the aspects around the variability and it's not the same condition that we have at Longfellow and Reiki that we have at Presumpscot. So. Brad?
Just a question about the portables. I'm assuming they must be over 1,000 square feet. And so is it possible to do a wall at the end where you're just coming in 6 feet or whatever you need to do to reduce the square footage of the existing structure?
Go ahead, Lisa. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we can look at. The two things are putting us over. One is the size, and one is there's 2 classrooms per portable. And so we have to meet all 3 requirements in order to not put the sprinkler system in. But one thing we might be able to discuss with them is a fire separation between the 2 classrooms to kind of create 2 buildings, if you will, if they would accept that. There's other things we're exploring too, in regards to commentary in the code language, about the intent of those exceptions. So definitely many parallel courses being explored, to see which one works out best.
Right. On the energy code, is that where we're going to need to get some sort of a LEED certification? And is that potentially going to be a huge thing if we have to meet these code requirements?
So we currently are a LEED certified building. We're LEED Silver. That's what we've designed to. So right now we're analyzing the detail on how this applies to the envelope, electrical, mechanical, and so we hope to have that study done fairly quickly here. Right now, the envelope is panning out quite well because it is a LEED building. So it's meeting a lot of the criteria already. I can't comment on the other sections quite yet until we've completed that study.
Thank you. Lisa, Mark, can you help me understand why it is that sprinkler system only has to be in? Another superintendent told me this piece about the modulars being moved. Like, what is it about? Why do they not have to have them if they remain where they are? Is it about the distance, or what is that reasoning?
Just their grandfathered in.
Right.
But why? So right now they're going to be used as classrooms. So why is that not? Why do they not have to have sprinklers in them?
Because
yeah, there's certain aspects of the code that require that you make an immediate upgrade, and then there are certain aspects of the code that you can use the term grandfather that was not required at the time that the project was built or went in place, and so there's differences in the way the code looks at different features of it, and so
moving it, even though it's the same exact building space, the moving it is considered like a new building or something?
Because it requires that we pull a permit to do all that. Okay. Where if you leave them alone, you're not required to pull a permit. You have something in place.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I thought it had something to do with actually this, space from the build, something, but it's really just physically moving that is a different, the permit is, it just makes it a different category altogether. Okay. That's really frustrating. Thank you.
Okay. Again, so I think there's like I said, we're making progress every day. We have a very open line of communication with several people over in the enforcement and planning review departments, and so that's a positive. And I know they're working hard to make sure that that we all provide a safe place for students and the construction to occur. So next steps are the scheduled meeting for this group is the August 26th. And so, and I don't know, Emily, if we've got, or Javier, if we've got the confirmation and we've got the right times here. That is the right time? All right.
Yeah, so yep.
So Reiki will be first at 5:30, and then we've got Presumpscot at 6:30 and Longfellow at 7:30. And then this group again, the DABC on September 16th, will be underway in the fall here, and then still working on what the groundbreaking will look like here. So. And that is what we have to share with everyone tonight.
That's, I think that's all we have. And I don't know if there's any other questions before we break for the evening.
See, Jessica has her hand up.
I had a quick question. Is there, I know this is more work for you all, but would it be possible for the DABC to get updates on the permitting process? Like if you do get the waiver, if something like that happens, is it possible to just let us know? Because I know, like I found out about the Presumpscot permit thing from a, staff email that went out to the Presumpscot community, and I had no idea that this was happening, which was not a great reflection on me as someone who's supposed to be a community member who knows about this stuff. So I know that things happen very quickly, but as big pieces of this are moving, if there's a way to just kind of give us updates, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very reasonable, and so the degree to which we've got the team and we're reviewing it frequently, we can find the right mechanism, and we'll work with the superintendent to find the right mechanism to disseminate all that information to you as this progresses.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, and we obviously are, working diligently to get school open, and obviously have a lot of work to do at all three of these sites.
Thank you all. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.